Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Claudine.
We have a very special show today, a very special guest. We're joined by Solomon Yue. Solomon is an entrepreneur. He's a business leader. He's an immigrant, a national political leader. He's the vice chairman and CEO of Republicans Overseas. I'd say Solomon is regarded as one of the driving forces bringing change to the Republican National Committee. Solomon was also in Washington with us when we traveled down for the repeal FATCA hearing. Our goal here today is to get some information about what's transpired since our FATCA hearing. So I want to say thank you for joining us, Solomon, and welcome to the show.
Happy to be with you.
With everything you do, I don't know when you have time to sleep.
Yeah, he's got a great
challenge.
Now, before we get in, Anthony, give me a really quick summary of a basic idea of what FATCA is and why, as tax attorneys, would we want to repeal a tax law?
Okay, so the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act is an idea that we should force banks overseas to report information on people they suspect of being Americans. And in order to make that determination, foreign banks have to go through their entire bank rolls, including people who aren't Americans, to find suspected Americans. And that's one half of it. The other half is Americans themselves have to disclose their foreign account forms on Form 8938. And there's even another half to FATCA, which we're not even going to talk about. And those are the payments you need to make to foreign nationals. U.S. companies are required to be withholding agents, and those rules are so complicated, I don't want to get into them.
Yeah. So, Solomon, now let me pose the question to you. Since we saw you in Washington, what has transpired since the FATCA hearing? How do you think things are progressing? Are they moving along? Do they seem stuck?
Actually, on the FATCA repeal bill, I expect a vote, and at least from the House side, and from the Committee on Government Reform and Oversight and Reform. But right now, leadership transition, they got a new committee chairman, and so from that perspective, the vote is on hold. And now, on the other hand, everybody start focusing on territorial taxation for individuals. The reason everybody start focusing on that is, one, Trump wants it to be done this year. We just can't wait, and he made a promise, and he had to keep the promise. And on top of it, if we get that one through, FATCA is a enforcement regime. So you really don't need a FATCA as an enforcement regime anymore. And if we have we switch to territorial taxation from citizenship-based taxation.
It gets rid of the issue another way, right? And when we talked when we were in talked in April, I think we were of the opinion that let's not mention switching the residency-based taxation, because there were some people who said, hey, we should really get on the bandwagon of this and sort of push this and push this. And I think we were all of the opinion, like, let's just focus on FATCA right now and try to repeal that. But what you're saying is that this might actually now make sense because there's so much inertia behind the residency-based taxation. Now, is this true or not? Do you know if the Democrats, because I swear that there's some Democrat group that supports a residency-based taxation as well, or at least Americans overseas, Americans abroad does?
ACA support so-called residency-based taxation. However, it really is a carve-out. It's a citizenship-based taxation with carve-outs, so-called exit tax. If you ask people expats to have a privilege working overseas and reporting yourself, not only reporting yourself, let IRS spy on you, and have that privilege, and to working overseas, and before you leave, you pay exit tax. Nobody is going to go overseas to work.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So it's a pretty terrible idea. And it's just, the people who make these laws have no idea how things play out in the real world. The consequences of what they do, they just ignore. And that's why I think it was brilliant that the name of the hearing, FATCA, was the unintended consequences of FATCA. Because everyone wants to talk about making laws, but they don't want to see how things actually go down. And the things that, we see the things go down in real life and how it affects real people around the world. Whether it's dealing. Here's one huge issue: U.S. persons who who at one point worked in Australia. They have something called a superannuation fund, and that is one of the absolute worst tax nightmares you can walk into, basically for your tax-free retirement account. Well, guess what? It's actually not tax-free in the U.S. It's so insane. Yet, in the IRS, the way they do it, they don't even know how to deal with it. So many issues they don't know how to deal with, and no one has quite any answers. No one sticks their necks out. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, and Solomon, I mean, here at the firm, I talked to people. I mean, probably 10 people alone last week who were literally scared to death. Normal, everyday folks who had $12,000 in an overseas account. And now they are absolutely terrified that the IRS is either going to come get them or take all their money. I mean, it literally breaks your heart to listen to these people's stories. And it's our job to calm them down and say, listen, it's not that bad. We can take care of this.
And when we're dealing with these cases, Solomon, these people have the foreign tax credit or foreign tax exclusion. They're going to be paying us thousands of dollars to fill out a form to prove they don't owe a tax. And so the amount of money, the amount of revenue the IRS actually collects from people working overseas, when things are actually done correctly, isn't enough. It's not worth the trouble. It certainly isn't for expats. And so this is something that is just a much better allocation of resources, just to say, hey, you know what? Let's tax like everybody else in the world. Can we do that? And I don't think that's very unreasonable.
Absolutely. You asked a real good question. The week we were in D.C. in April, that we did not want to move forward and go, full speed for territorial taxation for individuals. Then the week after we showed up to meet with lawmakers and congressmen, senators, and we realized we got something very, very unique. Our territorial taxation for individual proposal is revenue positive.
Yeah, I believe that.
How often you can say that?
Yeah.
And the minute we said it's revenue positive, and actually I got invited to Grover Norcrest Wednesday meeting and give little talk on that. And what happened is that under the same tax treaty, let's say individual billionaires, and especially individual Chinese billionaires, they can game the system. They can buy a real estate building, let's say office building or apartment, and hold the building for 5 years. While receiving rental incomes, they pay zero rental income tax. Then they sell the building, they got a capital gain, they pay zero capital gain tax. So when we were in D.C., one of the 4 accounting firms already told us this is going to be millions revenue for government, but at the same time will cost their overseas clients billions. We're talking about billions, okay? And so when we start talking to those lawmakers, and guess what? Everybody wants to find a way to stay away from so-called border adjustment tax.
Yeah. Yep.
And now we have a solution. Yeah. So suddenly that become a very, very popular, proposal. And the other reason it's popular because it fits Trump's job creation agenda. We apparently got that message through very, very well. You met Michael DeSombre in D.C., right? Mm-hmm. Who is my partner, worldwide president for Republicans overseas. 20 years ago, when a New York law firm sent him to Hong Kong, they got 20 lawyers. 18 out of 20 are American citizens. 20 years later, his office got 30 lawyers. Guess how many American lawyers? Two.
Yeah.
So that is a 40% premium hiring American citizens to work overseas.
That's absolutely right.
Because citizenship-based taxation.
And
now Speaker realized that. This is great news.
Yeah.
Now, there was some big stuff happening today, Solomon. You sent me a tweet that Paul Ryan actually sent out, which is really good progress.
Yes, he that was great. I was very excited when I saw that.
Yeah, so Paul Ryan was talking about residency-based taxation, and you can't get any really more into the forefront in the House of Representatives than the Speaker of the House. So this is known now. This is not the backroom secret of just a few people involved in international affairs. This is now front and center, and now we can, and I really hope that people keep an open mind about this, that to understand, what this is really doing. This is where, all of the clients, all the clients I have who own a business, they're all happy to not have to go through all the jump. I'm happy paying a known tax rate if I can plan for it. And if I don't have to jump through all these stupid hoops, I'm just fine paying the tax and being done with it. And the result is that you end up, because you have such a larger tax base, you end up with more revenue, even at a 15% rate. You're actually collecting it. So it would be such a boon to so many of my clients. I mean, all my clients would love it. And it's also sort of, in a weird way, even, my conversations with those working for the multinationals who do take advantage, that's the thing that most people don't understand. Because we don't have a residency-based taxation, there are things multinational corporations can take advantage of, some of the things you were mentioning with Chinese billionaires, but a large corporation in the U.S. can strip out all the earnings overseas and avoid any U.S. tax. The tax rate for for the Fortune 500 companies their target is 7%. And that's generally what when you go to the in-house council meetings, they're saying, we're trying to hit a target of 7%. Yeah, even though we have the highest corporate tax rate of 35%, 38% if you count some special ways, but they're able to game the system so much that they're paying this 15%, but still, or this 7%, but still, they would rather pay the 15%, even though it's higher than their effective 7%. And the reason is because there's these huge transaction costs they have to accomplish in order to get that tax rate down to 7%. They would much rather play, 15%. And I think that's why Trump came up with that figure, is he's talked to a bunch of them, and he knows exactly the number that they would prefer to pay with the least amount of headache. If you go over that, they're going to start trying to game the system where nobody really wins.
Yep.
Yes.
So Solomon, now what's happening next? What are the next steps that you all are taking?
Okay, we still expect to have a vote to repeal FATCA. The reason is, even we get through territorial taxation for individuals, you don't want a bad law on the book.
Yeah.
And next administration comes in, they need money, and they can do something about that.
Well, I would say, and it's that third half of FATCA I was mentioning at the end, that really has to get off. And if I think a little bit, if people it's so complicated, most people don't understand how terrible it is. But essentially, what it can do is, if a U.S. company fails to withhold 30% of certain payments to foreign companies, that U.S. company becomes on the hook for the taxes of that foreign company. That's what's going on now. And these rules are so complicated, even the people who are at the highest of their game, they'll give you conflicting answers, which is a terrible position to be if you happen to be in business for yourself. And it's on the books right now. It's just not, well, the IRS isn't really enforcing it, but there is the IRS publication 515, which is about an inch thick, and it is really some of the most dense reading ever. And that's really one reason why FATCA has to go away, because it's this other part of it, the U.S. component of it, that is just disastrous if it's ever enforced. It will. Anyone doing business overseas has a huge landmine.
So, Solomon, for the people that are listening, is there anything they can do to help?
Yes. We are in the process getting our territorial taxation for individual language written into House version of the tax reform. And once in the tax reform package, and we can encourage listeners to call their congressman and vote for that tax reform package.
Okay, that's good to know.
And there was, at the FATCA hearing, we sure had a lot of Democrats on our side. We sure did. And so I think it's even, powerful for a lot of Democrats who, overseas, you're impacted by this. Make it known. I would say make it known to the Republicans and the Democrats you're calling to say, look, I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to vote for I really want to support the Republican package here. You might want to get on board with them because these guys might peel away my support permanently if you don't, figure this out, that we need a much more fair, equitable, reasonable. And I think that's the thing, you heard a little bit about my call yesterday, Claudine, just sort of the craziness of all of this. It's just so absurd. You have bright people overseas who are trying to figure out, they're trying to apply logic to our tax system. And I'm just saying, every time it's like, there's your first problem. You can't do that. You have to understand this is something unique to itself, and it's not designed to raise revenue. It's designed to make your life pretty much as miserable as possible. And I think, through getting residency-based taxation, getting rid of FATCA, gets us to something where everybody's winning.
Now, Solomon, I'm assuming you're going to, you always have up-to-date information on Republicans overseas. What's that website?
It's www.republicansoverseas.com.
Awesome. Easy to remember.
Yep.
People can just go there, bookmark it, and check it out for updates. Solomon, again, I want to thank you so much for all the work you're doing behind the scenes. Meeting you and your team was awesome. Just so appreciative of, like I said, the hard work. I know you, like I said, you don't get a lot of sleep because you're busy saving the world.
And I just want to relay, a message from our clients who just greatly appreciate it. That the chances of victory, I think they're strong. The fact is we might not, but I think everybody appreciates what you're doing. You are an American success story yourself, and here you are trying to keep that dream going for other people, and I think that's incredibly admirable.
Thank you.
All right, Solomon, thank you so much again for joining us, and we will make sure we stay up to date on this. You can like and comment below and subscribe to our channel so you get more updates on FATCA and the residency-based taxation. Thanks so much for watching.